Hey everyone, I don't usually post about my personal life, but this time I can't hold it in. Writing this feels like shouting into a void, but maybe someone out there will get something from it. Whether it's a lesson, a warning, or just the satisfaction of knowing you're not alone when life throws you curveballs. This all started on a quiet Thursday evening. My wife, Emily, walked into the living room with a look on her face that I'd seen before, a mix of excitement and hesitation. She sat down next to me on the couch and started fiddling with her phone, pretending to scroll through something. I could tell she wanted to say something, so I set my book down and waited. "So," she started, her voice unusually casual, "Amanda is throwing a little party this Saturday night. Just a few friends, nothing crazy." The second she mentioned Amanda, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Amanda wasn't just Emily's best friend. She was also the kind of person who lived for drama and chaos. She was always pushing boundaries, dragging Emily into situations that left me scratching my head. Over the years, I'd learned to tolerate her because Emily valued their friendship, but I'd never trusted Amanda's judgment. "I don't know, Emily," I said cautiously. "You know how I feel about Amanda's parties. They're always more than what she claims." Emily rolled her eyes and gave me a little laugh, the kind she used when she thought I was overreacting. "Ryan, it's just a small gathering. It's not like we're in college anymore. Amanda's grown up." I wanted to believe her, but something about the way she avoided looking directly at me didn't sit right. "If it's such a small gathering, why does she need you there? Why not just hang out with her other friends?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "She asked me specifically," Emily replied, her voice a little sharper now. "You're really making a big deal out of nothing. It wasn't worth pushing further." I knew that if I kept questioning her, it would just turn into an argument, and I didn't want to be that guy, the overprotective husband who doesn't trust his wife to make her own decisions. So I let it go, even though every instinct in me was screaming that something was off. When Saturday night came, Emily went all out getting ready. I'd never seen her put that much effort into a simple, small gathering. She wore a sleek black dress that hugged her figure perfectly, paired with heels that added just the right touch of elegance. She even wore the perfume I'd bought her years ago, the one she hadn't touched in ages. "You look stunning," I said, watching her as she adjusted her earrings in the mirror. "Thanks," she said, barely glancing at me. There was no warmth in her voice, no trace of the usual playfulness we shared when she dressed up. She grabbed her purse and keys, then paused at the door. "Don't wait up for me. It might go late." That was the first real warning sign. Emily always came home early from these things, complaining about how boring or predictable they were. But this time, she seemed almost eager. I forced a smile and nodded, even though my gut told me this wasn't just another night out with Amanda. As the door closed behind her, the house fell into an eerie silence. I tried distracting myself with a game on TV, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to the way she'd looked at me before she left, like I was an afterthought. She hadn't even asked if I wanted to join her, which was unusual. Normally, she'd at least make an effort to include me, even if she knew I'd decline. The hours ticked by, and my unease grew. I checked my phone several times, half expecting a text or a photo of her with Amanda and the gang. But nothing came. By midnight, I was pacing the living room, trying to convince myself that I was overthinking it. She was probably just having fun and didn't want to be rude by texting all night. When I finally went to bed, the sheets on her side were still cold. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every detail of our conversation from earlier. Was I being paranoid? Was this just a case of me projecting my insecurities onto her? I didn't have an answer, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Morning came, and her side of the bed was still untouched. I got up and checked the house, hoping to find her asleep on the couch or in the guest room. But she wasn't there. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and there were no missed calls or messages on my phone. That's when the panic started to set in. Emily was always good about checking in, even if she stayed out late. I called her, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Amanda next, and after a few rings, she picked up. "Hey, Amanda," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Is Emily still with you?" There was a pause, just long enough to make my heart race. No, she left hours ago," Amanda said, her tone defensive. "Why?" Is everything okay? She didn't come home, I replied, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Oh, well, maybe she just needed some time to herself? Amanda suggested, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm sure she's fine. Something about her response felt rehearsed, like she was trying to cover for Emily. I thanked her and hung up, but the knot in my stomach only tightened. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Something was happening, something I wasn't ready to face. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to let this slide. I didn't know the full story yet, but I was determined to find out. Little did I know, the truth would shake the foundation of everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The hours after my call with Amanda were some of the longest of my life. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, willing it to ring. Maybe Emily would call and explain everything. Some silly misunderstanding, a dead phone battery, or even that she'd stayed at a hotel to avoid driving late. Any explanation would have been better than the alternative, that she was lying to me. By 10 a.m., I couldn't sit still anymore. I started tidying up the house, more to keep my hands busy than anything else. That's when I noticed something odd. Emily's work bag was sitting by the door, but her purse was gone. Normally, she never left the house without both. It was a small detail, but it felt significant, like a missing puzzle piece I didn't know how to fit. I decided to call Emily again, straight to voicemail. I tried 2 more times before leaving a message. Emily, it's me. I'm starting to get worried. Please call me back when you get this. With nothing else to do, I grabbed my car keys and decided to retrace her steps. I started with Amanda's house. As I pulled up to the curb, I could see Amanda sitting on her porch, sipping coffee. She spotted me and waved, but her expression was guarded, like she'd been expecting me. Ryan, hey, she said, setting her mug down. Did you hear from Emily yet? No, I said bluntly. That's why I'm here. Are you sure she left last night? Amanda hesitated, glancing down at her hands. Yeah, she left around midnight. She said she was heading home. Alone? I pressed. Yes, Amanda said quickly, too quickly. Look, Ryan, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but maybe you should just wait for her to call. I'm sure there's a logical explanation. Her words felt hollow, and the way she avoided eye contact only made my suspicion grow. I left without saying much, but as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that Amanda wasn't telling me everything. I went home and sat on the couch, my mind racing. If Emily wasn't at Amanda's and she hadn't come home, then where was she? And why wasn't she answering her phone? Then it hit me. Emily had mentioned the name of another friend at the party. Some guy named Derek. I didn't know him well, but I'd met him a couple of times at Amanda's gatherings. He was tall, charming, and always a little too friendly with Emily for my liking. At the time, I'd brushed it off as harmless flirting, but now I wasn't so sure. I found Derek's number in my phone. Emily had added it months ago after a group outing. My hands trembled as I hit call. It rang a few times before he answered, his voice groggy. Hello? Derek, it's Ryan, I said, trying to keep my tone steady. Was Emily with you last night? There was a pause, just long enough to confirm my worst fears. No, man. I haven't seen her since the party. Since the party? I repeated, my voice rising. So she was with you? Well, yeah, Derek admitted reluctantly, but only at Amanda's. She left right after, I swear. I hung up before he could say anything else. My chest felt tight, and my mind was racing. Emily had lied. She told me it was just a small gathering with Amanda, but Derek had been there too. Why had she kept that from me? And why was everyone so eager to brush off her disappearance? I needed answers, and I needed them now. I decided to search for clues, anything that might tell me where she'd gone. I started with her laptop, but it was locked with a password I didn't know. Then I checked her email on our shared desktop. She'd left herself signed in, but there was nothing unusual in her inbox, just the usual work emails and junk mail. Frustrated, I opened her social media accounts. That's when I found it. A private message from Amanda, sent just hours before the party. Don't worry, he won't find out. Just be careful. My heart sank. I stared at the message, reading it over and over, trying to make sense of it. Was this about me? Was Amanda helping Emily hide something? Or someone? I leaned back in my chair, my mind spinning. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Emily was hiding something big, and whatever it was, Amanda was in on it. I sat there for a long time, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront Amanda and demand the truth, but another part of me knew I needed more proof. If I accused Emily without solid evidence, she'd just deny everything and make me look like the bad guy. So I waited. I waited for her to come home, to face me, to tell me the truth. But as the hours passed and the sun started to set, I realized she wasn't coming back. Not yet, anyway. And when she finally did, I'd be ready. It wasn't until late that night that I finally heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. My heart raced as I stood near the window, watching her step out. Emily moved slowly, almost cautiously, like she knew what awaited her inside. She had changed out of the dress she wore the night before and was now in jeans and a casual sweater. But her face gave her away. She looked exhausted, guilty even. When she opened the door, I was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch TV. She hesitated in the doorway, clearly surprised to see me still awake. "Hey," she said softly, setting her purse down on the counter. "You're up late." I didn't bother responding right away. Instead, I muted the TV and turned to face her. "Where were you?" Emily froze, her eyes widening for just a split second before she quickly composed herself. "I told you, I was at Amanda's party. All night." I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "Because Amanda said you left hours ago." Her face paled, but she forced a laugh. I went for a drive after. I just needed some time to think." "To think?" I repeated, standing up. "Emily, you didn't come home. You didn't answer my calls or texts. Do you have any idea how worried I was?" "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "I should have called, I know, but I wasn't in the right headspace." "Headspace for what?" I demanded, stepping closer. "What's going on, Emily? And don't lie to me." "I talked to Amanda. I talked to Derek. I know something isn't adding up." Her eyes darted to the floor, and she bit her lip, a nervous habit I knew all too well. "Ryan, you're overthinking this," she said weakly. "There's nothing going on." "Then why?" I said, pulling out my phone. "Did Amanda send you a message saying, 'Don't worry, he won't find out'? What am I not supposed to find out, Emily?" Her face went completely white. For a moment, she just stood there, silent, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for words. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Then explain it to me," I said, my voice low and firm. "Because right now, it looks like you've been lying to me. And I'm giving you one chance to come clean." Emily's hands were trembling now, and she clutched the back of a chair for support. "Ryan, I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd be upset," she stammered. "But Amanda was just trying to cover for me. I wasn't with Derek. I swear." I narrowed my eyes. "If you weren't with him, then who were you with? Because I don't believe for a second that you were just driving around." She hesitated again, and in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't going to come easy. Whatever she was hiding, it was big, and I was going to find out, whether she told me or not. Emily didn't answer. She just stood there, gripping the back of the chair as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Her silence was louder than any excuse she could have made, and it infuriated me. "Emily," I said, my voice steady but cold, "you need to tell me the truth. Right now." "I told you," she finally said, her voice shaky. "I wasn't with anyone. I just needed time to clear my head." "Clear your head?" I snapped. "From what? What's so stressful in your life that you needed to disappear all night without telling your husband where you were? Or is it someone else you didn't want me to know about?" Her eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. "It's not like that," she whispered. "Ryan, please, just stop. You're making this into something it's not." "Then make me believe you," I said firmly. "Give me a reason to trust you. Because right now, Emily, all I see is someone who's lying to my face." She looked away, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of her lies was finally starting to crush her. "Fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll tell you, but you have to promise you won't freak out." "That depends," I said, crossing my arms. Tell me the truth, and I'll decide how to react. She hesitated, chewing on her lip again. Then she took a deep breath and said, I went to the party, but it wasn't what I expected. Amanda invited some people I didn't know, and things got out of hand. What do you mean, out of hand? I asked, my suspicion growing with every word. There were drinks, and some people were being flirty, she said, avoiding my gaze. I felt uncomfortable, so I left early. And you didn't think to call me? I pressed. Or come home. I was embarrassed, she said quickly. I didn't want you to think I was part of it. Part of what? I demanded. Emily, stop dancing around the truth and just tell me what happened. She let out a frustrated sigh and threw up her hands. There was a guy, okay? He was being too friendly, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I left. Her words hung in the air, but they didn't sit right with me. There was something she wasn't saying, something she was holding back, and I wasn't going to let it go. What's his name? I asked, my voice calm but firm. What? She said, looking genuinely startled. The guy, I said. What's his name? Because if this is all as innocent as you're claiming, I'm sure you wouldn't mind telling me. She froze, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for an escape. It doesn't matter, she said finally. Nothing happened. Then why does it feel like you're lying to me? I shot back. Why do I feel like there's more to this story than you're willing to admit? Ryan, please, she said, her voice breaking. Can we not do this right now? I'm exhausted. No, I said, shaking my head. We're doing this now. You don't get to drop vague excuses and walk away. Not after last night. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at me like she didn't know what to say. And then, without another word, she turned and walked down the hallway, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I stood there, stunned. This wasn't like her. Emily wasn't the type to shut down in the middle of a conversation. Whatever she was hiding, it was big enough to make her act completely out of character. And that scared me. I sat back down on the couch, my mind racing. I knew I couldn't let this go. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I was going to have to find it myself. That's when I remembered her phone. She'd left it charging on the kitchen counter, probably thinking I wouldn't dare go through it. But at that moment, I didn't care about boundaries or trust. I needed answers. I walked over and picked it up, my hands trembling slightly. The screen lit up, asking for a passcode. Luckily, I knew it. It was the same one she'd been using for years. My heart pounded as I unlocked it and started scrolling through her messages. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Conversations with her coworkers, her mom, and Amanda. But then I saw a name I didn't recognize, Zach. The messages were vague, but they were enough to make my blood run cold. Zach, last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Emily, I told you. We need to be careful. He can't find out. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. The words blurred as anger and betrayal washed over me. Emily had lied to my face, and now I had proof. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. If she was capable of hiding this from me, I needed to be smart. I needed to figure out the full story before I made my next move. And when the time came, she wasn't going to see it coming. I sat there in the quiet kitchen, staring at her phone as my world slowly unraveled. The messages between Emily and Zach confirmed what I had feared. There was someone else. My mind raced as I scrolled further, piecing together their conversations. Each text felt like a dagger to my chest, cutting through every ounce of trust one had in her. Most of the messages were vague, likely on purpose. Emily wasn't stupid. She knew better than to leave a paper trail that could incriminate her. But there were enough breadcrumbs to paint a picture I couldn't ignore. Mentions of last night, our little secret, and I'll find a way to see you soon left no room for doubt. She was seeing Zach behind my back. I clenched the phone tightly, my knuckles white with rage. I didn't know who this Zach was, but I was going to find out. He had wormed his way into my marriage, into my wife's life, and I wasn't going to let it slide. But first, I needed more information. I wasn't about to confront Emily until I had every piece of the puzzle. If I went in unprepared, she'd just spin her way out of it, turning the tables on me and making me doubt my own judgment. No, This time I needed to be smart. Calculated. I decided to check her location history. It was a feature we'd both enabled years ago when we started traveling more often. It wasn't meant for spying. It was for safety. Funny how things like that can turn into tools for uncovering betrayal. I opened the map, scrolling through the timestamps for the night before. As I suspected, she hadn't been driving around to clear her head. After leaving Amanda's, she'd gone to a hotel across town. She stayed there for nearly 3 hours before heading back to Amanda's house and then eventually home. A hotel? My stomach churned as the reality sank in. Whatever excuses she tried to give me, there was no innocent reason for her to be there, especially for that long. My wife, the woman I'd trusted with my life, had been in a hotel with another man. I put the phone down, my hands shaking. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. I wanted to storm into the bedroom, wake her up, and demand answers. But I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. She'd lie, she'd cry, she'd gaslight me until I didn't know what was real anymore. No, I needed to play this carefully. If I confronted her now, she'd just find a way to cover her tracks even better. I needed more proof. Solid, undeniable proof that she couldn't weasel her way out of. And I needed to know who Zach was. That's when it hit me. I could check her social media. Emily wasn't the type to post much, but Zach might be. If he was arrogant enough to send her those messages, maybe he was careless enough to leave clues online. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. It didn't take long to find him. Zach's name and photo matched a guy who was friends with both Amanda and Emily on social media. His profile was public, and as I scrolled through his posts, I felt my blood boil. Zach was everything I wasn't. Younger, fitter, with a smug grin that made me want to punch the screen. His posts were full of flashy nights out, expensive dinners, and cryptic captions that suddenly took on a new meaning. One post from 2 weeks ago caught my eye, a photo of a fancy cocktail with the caption, "Sometimes the forbidden fruit tastes the sweetest." The comments below were filled with laughing emojis and winks, but one stood out, a single heart emoji from Emily. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me see red. She'd been flirting with him publicly, right under my nose. I kept digging, scrolling back through his photos until I found something that made my stomach drop. It was a picture of him at the same hotel Emily had gone to last night. The caption read, "Late nights, best nights," with no further explanation. That was it. I had all the proof I needed. Emily and Zach weren't just flirting. They were having an affair. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they painted was devastating. I closed the laptop and sat back, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. Part of me wanted to confront Emily right then and there, to throw all the evidence in her face and watch her squirm. But another part of me, the rational part, knew that wouldn't be enough. I needed to handle this carefully, to make sure she couldn't twist the story or make me look like the bad guy. So I waited. I spent the rest of the day pretending everything was fine, going through the motions while my mind raced with plans. When Emily finally woke up and came into the kitchen, she gave me a cautious smile, like she was testing the waters. "Good morning," she said softly, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Morning," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Sleep well?" She nodded, avoiding my gaze. "Yeah, sorry about last night. I wasn't feeling great." "It's okay," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just glad you're home." She looked relieved, like she thought she'd gotten away with it. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't going to let this slide. I had a plan, and when the time came, she'd have no choice but to face the truth. The hours after our awkward breakfast passed in excruciating silence. Emily spent most of the day avoiding me, retreating to the bedroom with her phone or pretending to tidy up around the house. Every time I saw her, my stomach churned. She acted like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just shattered the foundation of our marriage. But I wasn't going to tip my hand, not yet. I decided to continue gathering evidence. If Emily thought she could hide behind vague excuses and lies, she was sorely mistaken. I went back to her phone while she was in the shower, scrolling through her conversations with Amanda. Most of it was mundane chatter, but then I found another incriminating message from the night of the party. "Amanda, did Zach like his surprise? Hope you both had fun winking face, Emily. Stop, you're going to get me in trouble." "But yeah, he did." That was all I needed to confirm Amanda's involvement. She wasn't just an innocent bystander. She was actively helping Emily cover up her affair. My blood boiled as I realized the extent of their deception. Amanda, who had smiled and reassured me on her porch, had been part of this from the start. I was tempted to confront Amanda directly, but I knew it wouldn't help. She'd just warn Emily, and then they'd spin some story to make me look like the villain. No, I needed to keep my cool and focus on the bigger picture. Later that afternoon, Emily came into the living room, trying to act normal. She sat down across from me, tucking her legs under herself and sipping her coffee. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tentative. I looked up from the book I was pretending to read. "Why wouldn't I be?" She shrugged, fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. "You've just been quiet today." I gave her a small smile, one that didn't reach my eyes. "Just thinking." She nodded, clearly uncomfortable. "About what?" "About us," I said, watching her closely. "About trust." Her expression faltered for a split second before she plastered on a smile. "Ryan, if this is about the party, it's not just about the party," I interrupted, keeping my voice calm. "It's about everything. About what we mean to each other. About honesty." Her hands tightened around her mug, and she looked away. "You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be," she said quietly. "I've told you the truth." "Have you?" I asked, leaning forward. "Because I'm starting to wonder if I even know who you are anymore." She flinched, and for a moment, I thought she might break. But then she took a deep breath and stood up. "I don't know what you want me to say, Ryan," she said, her voice trembling. "I've done nothing wrong." I stared at her, my jaw tightening. The audacity of her lie made my chest ache with anger. But I kept my cool, knowing that the moment to strike wasn't here yet. "If you say so, Emily," I said evenly, picking up my book again. "If you say so." She stood there for a moment longer, as if waiting for me to press her. When I didn't, she sighed and walked back to the bedroom. I watched her go, my mind racing. She thought she'd won, that she'd talked her way out of it. But she had no idea what was coming. I decided it was time to involve someone else, someone I could trust. My best friend, Mark, had always been the one I turned to when things got tough. He was level-headed, smart, and, most importantly, he wasn't afraid to tell me the hard truths. If anyone could help me figure out my next steps, it was him. I called Mark later that evening, stepping outside so Emily wouldn't overhear. "Hey man," I said when he picked up. "Do you have a minute? I need to talk." "Of course," he said, his voice immediately serious. "What's going on?" "It's Emily," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I think she's cheating on me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Ryan," Mark said finally, his tone cautious. "What makes you think that?" I told him everything, about the party, the texts, the hotel, Zach. By the time I was done, my hands were trembling and I could barely catch my breath. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I feel like I'm losing my mind." "First of all," Mark said, his voice firm, "you're not crazy. It sounds like you have more than enough reason to suspect something's going on. But you need to stay calm. Don't let her see you lose control." "I know," I said, running a hand through my hair. "But it's so hard. I feel like I'm living with a stranger." "You need to gather as much evidence as you can," Mark continued. "If this goes south, and it sounds like it might, you're going to want everything documented. Don't confront her until you're ready." "Ready for what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "For whatever comes next," he said simply. "Whether it's the truth, a fight, or the end." The weight of his words settled on my chest like a boulder. I thanked him and hung up, staring out at the darkening sky. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I couldn't let this go. Not anymore. When I went back inside, Emily was already in bed, pretending to sleep. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her. She looked peaceful, like she didn't have a care in the world. But I knew better. And soon, so would she. The next morning, I woke up determined. I'd spent the entire night thinking about Mark's advice, replaying everything I knew, and strategizing my next move. Emily's betrayal wasn't just about her. It was about the years we'd built together, the trust she had shattered, and the life she had turned into a lie. I couldn't sit idly by any longer. Emily was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, sipping her coffee and scrolling through her phone like it was just another ordinary day. Her casual demeanor made my blood boil, but I kept my composure. "Morning," I said, grabbing a mug and pouring myself some coffee. "Morning," she replied, glancing up briefly. "You sleep okay?" "Not really," I said, taking a seat across from her. "I've had a lot on my mind." She paused, her fingers hovering over her phone screen. "About what?" "About us," I said simply, locking eyes with her. "About honesty. Trust." Her face faltered for a split second before she quickly recovered. "Ryan, we've been over this. You're reading into things that aren't there." "Am I?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "Because I've been doing a lot of thinking. And a lot of digging." Her hand tightened around her coffee mug. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I know about Zach. I know about the hotel. I know about Amanda helping you cover it all up." The color drained from her face. For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, she managed to choke out, "Ryan, it's not what you think." "Then tell me," I said, crossing my arms. "Tell me what it is. Because the messages I found on your phone and Zach's posts on social media paint a pretty clear picture." Her eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. I was going to tell you," she stammered. "I just didn't know how." "Tell me what?" I demanded. "That you've been sneaking around behind my back? That you've been lying to me for God knows how long?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," she cried, her voice breaking. "It was just a mistake. A stupid, horrible mistake." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "A mistake? You call texting him, meeting him, and spending the night with him a mistake? That's not a mistake, Emily. That's a choice. And you made it." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said through her tears. "I swear, I didn't." "Well, congratulations," I said coldly. "You succeeded in destroying everything instead." Her sobs grew louder, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the messages, the lies, the betrayal. She had made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. "I've already packed your things," I said, standing up and walking toward the door. "They're outside. I want you out of this house by the end of the day." She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "Ryan, please," she begged. "Can't we just talk about this? I'll do anything to fix it." "You should have thought about that before you threw our marriage away," I said, my voice icy. "There's nothing left to fix." With that, I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her sitting there in stunned silence. As I stepped outside, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and an odd sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally in control. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let her lies define me. This was the end of our story, but it was also the beginning of something new. And I was ready to face it, one step at a time. By the time I returned to the house that evening, Emily was gone. Her things, what little I had packed for her, were no longer on the porch, and the spare key she used was left on the welcome mat. It was over. A part of me had been dreading this moment, but the other part felt free. I was no longer tethered to the lies, the betrayal, or the constant second-guessing. Inside, the house felt eerily quiet. I sat down on the couch, staring at the empty space where she used to sit, her laughter once filling the room. The memories hit me like a wave, but this time, I let them come. I needed to face the pain, to let it all out so I could move forward. The next morning, I called Mark to update him. He listened patiently as I told him everything, from the confrontation to Emily's departure. "You did the right thing, Ryan," he said firmly. "It's better to cut ties than to stay in something that's built on lies." "I know," I said, "but it doesn't make it hurt any less." "It won't," he admitted. "Not for a while. But you'll get through this. And when you do, you'll be stronger for it." His words gave me a strange sense of comfort. Mark was right. This was going to hurt for a long time, but it wasn't the end of my story. It was just the end of one chapter. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding my life. I reached out to friends I hadn't seen in ages, reconnected with family, and started going to the gym again. Every day was a small step forward, a reminder that I could still find happiness even if it looked different than I had imagined. Emily tried to contact me a few times, texts, calls, even an email. She apologized over and over, begging for a chance to talk, but I never responded. I knew that opening that door would only drag me back into the pain I was trying so hard to leave behind. Some things were better left in the past. Eventually, I learned that she and Zach didn't last long. Amanda let it slip to one of our mutual friends that their relationship fell apart within weeks. Apparently, Zach wasn't as charming or committed as he had seemed, and Emily ended up alone. I thought I'd feel some satisfaction hearing that, but I didn't. If anything, it made me sad for her. She had destroyed everything for nothing. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had my own life to focus on, and I wasn't going to waste another second looking back. One evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sunset with a cold beer in hand. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again, and that was enough. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to find yourself. And while I hadn't planned on this journey, I was ready to see where it would take me next.